When was the last time you picked up the phone to call a sales prospect and you actually got through on the first 3 rings and you had a live, breathing person on the other end? That used to be the case. It's not the case anymore. This has nothing to do with you, the sales professional, or the product or service you're selling, but it has everything to do with the last recession we just came through. You see, the people that we are calling used to have support staff that helped them get their jobs done. Many of those people were laid off during the last recession. The same people that we're calling, they're also wearing 2, 3 hats from their coworkers who also did not survive the last recession. That means that the decision makers that we need to get through to on the phone to make our sales presentation are busier than they've ever been before. No wonder that salespeople in the United States have the highest level of frustration when it comes to sales prospecting than since these figures were kept 50 years ago. There is some good news. As frustrated as they are with voicemail, it doesn't hold a candle to their frustration level with email. The avalanche of emails has really bogged them down. So when asked, business leaders today tell us, hey, if you're going to reach out to me for the very first time, do it by phone versus email. Now, if you've been in sales for more than 2 weeks, this doesn't really get you excited because you know whether you call a prospect or email a prospect, it just feels like they're not returning either one. This is not your imagination. In a study conducted over the last 2 years, we found out that buyers only return 5% of all voicemails, not just yours, all voicemails. It's no wonder salespeople think that leaving a voicemail message is just a huge waste of time. You can't blame them. In fact, if they're your competitors, I would encourage them to keep thinking that way, because I'm about to share with you an arsenal of proven ideas and tactics and strategies that you can start using immediately to have the number of your voicemails returned or calls accepted double. But let's get back to our competitors. We can't blame them for thinking that leaving a voicemail is a waste of time, but let me reassure you that leaving a well-crafted voicemail is not a waste of time. In fact, it's an extraordinary investment. Let me tell you why. In 2013, we got back, right about the middle of 2013, we got back a series of research studies that confirmed that our clients have become so busy that you have to reach out and touch a new prospect between 8 and 14 times. Now in 2011 and 12, that was only 11, 8 to 11. It's now 8 to 14. These are 8 to 14 touch points. Now what do I mean by a touch point? Voicemail, email, office visits, old-fashioned snail mail, hey, even faxes. Anything that you can do to connect with a prospect. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, it's all considered a touch point. But just remember that you have to have between 8 and 14 before you will even start to attract the attention of a sales prospect. I know these numbers seem high, but now that you know this, it gives you a distinct competitive advantage over your competition. And let me show you why. The University of Notre Dame recently conducted a study on how often your competitors call new sales prospects and then just give up. On average, it's 1.8. That means that they identify a prospect, touch them 1.8 times, and then if they don't hear back, they abandon that prospect. That leaves that prospect ready for you to reach out between 8 and 14 times. In fact, actually, 44%, they stop just after 1. 24%, well, they stick it out. They go for 2. 14% stop after 3. 12 after 4, and 4 after 5. All you have to remember is that by knowing that you have to touch a prospect between 8 and 14 times gives you an incredible strategic advantage over your competition. And without a doubt, the most effective of those touch points is voicemail. Colleen Francis is one of the most famous consultants to the outbound telemarketing industry. One of the most amazing things that she teaches her clients is that on your first 3 voicemails to a prospect, don't bother leaving your telephone number. She says that you've got precious little time before the prospect will start to delete your call. And in fact, if you want to write this down, it's 7.2 seconds. 7.2 seconds is the average amount of time a prospect will listen to a voicemail before they begin to delete. She believes that the odds of a brand new prospect returning any calls are slim, so why bother wasting precious audio real estate with your phone number? She says, use this time for brand building. Leave a message that's going to build the client's awareness of your business. That's going to pay off on touchpoints 4 through 14. Now, just for the record, I do recommend you always leave your phone number on all voicemail messages. I just recommend you do it slightly different, and in a few moments, I'm going to explain why. When I talk to the top salespeople around this country during my seminars, one of the questions I always ask them is about prospecting and voicemail. They tell me what differentiates them from their peers and competitors is they don't look at voicemail as an opportunity to leave a condensed sales call. Their sole reason for leaving a voicemail message is to get a call returned or to have a future call accepted. If that's the case, it changes how you word your voicemail altogether. Specifically, that means that there's certain kinds of voicemail that get outstanding results and most of them get not so outstanding results. For example, hands down, the most effective strategy that you can use as a salesperson to get a prospect to call you back is to begin a voicemail message by citing that you have a recommendation from someone they know, a coworker, a vendor, a friend. By far, a voicemail begins with a referral increases your chance of having a return phone call by 375%. Now, let's be honest. Most of the time when you call a prospect, you don't have a referral recommendation. That's why it's a prospect. By using some creativity, I'm going to show you tactics that you can use to obtain a call in half the time or get your call accepted in half the time as you're doing right now. Now, let's say in this particular scenario I'm going to start off with, we're calling a corporate meeting planner. First thing I want you to do is go to Google or LinkedIn or Hoover's or data.com. It really doesn't matter. Go to a source where you can do some research on your prospect's company. Now, for this scenario, we're going to assume we know the prospect's name. I want you to find out who is the CEO, COO, CMO. It doesn't matter. It's a person who works in the C-suite. Now, why do I want you to find out and call first someone who's in the C-suite? Because most likely they're the only people left that still have a live, breathing gatekeeper. And I want you to get that gatekeeper on the phone. Now, trust me, I haven't lost my mind. I do, in fact, want you to get a gatekeeper on the phone. Let me show you why. In this particular case, remember, we're looking for a corporate meeting planner. We've called the CEO's office. The phone is answered by the gatekeeper. Her name is Ms. Blue. Good morning, Ms. Blue. I was trying to reach Mr. Red, your meeting planner. I think I dialed the wrong extension. But while I've got you on the phone, can I ask your advice? I've got some questions about this year's annual meeting. Would you agree that Mr. Red's the right person to call? Now, one of two things is going to happen. She's either going to say yes, or she's going to say no, you need to call Sally White. It doesn't actually matter. Thank them very much for their advice, and then end by asking one last favor. May I impose upon you to transfer me? Of course they're going to transfer you. The good news is that's the sole reason we called the gatekeeper, was to get that transfer. Now, when you use this tactic, I want you to be prepared to sell to Mr. Red because he's going to take your call. Now, why is that? Because when Mr. Red's phone starts ringing and he looks down on his caller ID, he's going to see that the CEO's extension is calling him. He will take your call. Now, when Mr. Red answers the phone, just say, "Good morning, Mr. Red. I was just on the phone with Miss Blue, who is your CEO's admin. I had some questions about this year's annual meeting, and she suggested that you'd be the best person to talk to. Do you have a moment?" Now, trust me, he will have a moment because he wants to find out what you and Ms. Red were talking about in regards to his annual meeting. The next scenario is probably even more common. That's when you're calling a company you know you want to talk to, in our case, the meeting planner, but you don't have any idea who that person is. So let's use the exact same formula. Let's go to the C-suite. If it's not a big company and they don't have a C-suite, get as high up the organization as you can. The most important thing to do is you want to get a call into that executive office area, have someone answer the phone and just say, "Good morning. My name is Bill Todd. I've got some questions about this year's annual meeting. Can you recommend the person on your staff that should handle these questions? Now, you're most likely going to get a name and a transfer. And just like before, be prepared to sell. Because when that person looks down and sees somebody in the executive office calling them, they're going to take the call and you've just cut through voicemail. Another scenario that I'm sorry to say is more common now than I've ever seen before, and that's when you call a company and everybody in that company is hiding behind voicemail. It doesn't matter whether they're the CEO or the maintenance person. They're not taking calls. So what do? Let me give you a couple of tips I think that'll really help you. My first tip is to call the one person at most big companies that no one ever calls. That's the webmaster. The webmasters know a lot about what's going on in a company because they not only build the web, they build the intranet. They know what each department does and who does it. So how do you find out a company's webmaster? Well, the most simple way to do it is a Google search. Just go to Google and type in the word who is. Now combine those words so it's one word, who is, and then the URL of the company that you're looking for. Let me show you how easy this is. Just go to Google, type in who is, remember, one word, and then your prospect's web address, the URL. Google will return several companies that will give you information who the webmaster is. You may have to go through 2 or 3 to find one that gives you the phone number. But let me give you another idea that I think is much better because it really specifically delivers the information you need. And that's a website called eWhois, just eWhois.com. Go on to that site, type in the URL or web address of your prospect, and right here, you see it says Who Is Lookup? I want you to click on that. And here's my website. It tells you all the information you need to know about who the webmaster is, to include the snail mail address and the phone number. Now you've got a number to begin to find a way to get into that prospect. Now another company that does just as good, if not almost slightly better job, is called Network Solutions. Just go on to Google right here, type in Network Solutions and Who Is. When you do that, it will take you to Network Solutions Who Is tool. Repeat the process. Just type in the URL or web address of your prospect, and it too will bring back all the information you need to identify the name, mailing address, and phone number of that webmaster. When you get that webmaster on the phone, always begin by saying, I need your help. You see, when the webmaster gets a call, it's not usually someone calling for help. It's usually someone upset because the web's not working. So you're going to pique their interest. They don't get many calls for help. Then I like to drop a strategic, quick compliment. Usually I say something like, I was just on your website. I really like the way you've organized your information. It's very clear and concise. Once again, this puts you head and shoulders above anyone else who's called that webmaster in the last 6 months. Then just ask them the same question we've been asking all day long. Who within your organization is the best person to call for? In our scenario, we're talking meetings. It can be anything. The webmaster doesn't get many of these calls, and you may find them really forthcoming with a lot of information. It's a big treat for them to talk to someone who isn't yelling at them first. Now, after the webmaster, my absolute favorite department to call is Accounts Receivable. Why is that? Because this department is in charge of getting paid. They don't put on their voicemail. If you call them, they want to talk to you. Accounts Receivable is a wonderful source because they work with every department within the company. There's where you might get a nice, soft referral. If your prospect works for a publicly traded company that has stock, I also recommend a third option. That is to call a department called Investor Relations. The Investor Relations Department rarely gets phone calls. And when someone calls, it's usually a big investor. So they don't get voicemail. They get a live, breathing voice. When you call them, ask them the same question. What we really want is the transfer. Because no one in that company ever gets called by Investor Relations. So they're going to be curious. Why are these people calling me? They'll take the call. Now, in the event you do call at lunchtime, for example, and the Investor Relations staff member is not there, I would like you to leave the following message. leave your name, your phone number, and then state the following. I have a question that I was unable to answer by reading your latest 10K report. You can also say, or by reading your annual report. Either one's fine. Could you please call me when you get a moment? Give your name and your phone number. You will get a call back. I absolutely promise you. And when you get that call back, you will then get a referral. This works every single time. So let's review. By creatively making a few phone calls within a prospect's company, you can easily obtain the name of a coworker and at the same time get a soft referral. And remember, referrals generate 4 times the callbacks as traditional voicemail message. Now, I'd like to take a moment to address 3 specific types of clients: franchise organizations, national associations, and state associations. This is a powerful tip, and I promise you, if you use this tip, you will get a call back almost 100% of the time. National associations and franchise organizations traditionally divide the country up into regions. 1 to 5, 15, it doesn't matter. Every region has a chairman and a vice chairman. Their names can be found by a simple Google search. It'll most likely be on the company website. If it's a state association, they won't have regions, but they will have key committee chairmen, the chairman of the marketing committee, the chairman of the education committee. There'll also be assistant or co-chairman. Those will also be on their websites. This is a big, important thing to these chairmen. They want to make sure their names are there, and that's going to come in handy for us. So whether it's a national association or a committee chairman, I want you to make a phone call. Ask them for their help. You're calling them at their local business. Tell them you're looking for the individual at headquarters that heads up, in our case, meetings, but it's whatever you're selling. They will tell you who it is. They know who's doing it at headquarters. It's a big part of their chairmanship. This is a great idea even if you already know the prospect's name, because what we want is the referral. We want to be able to say that the regional chairman or the committee chairman recommended us. Keeping regional chairman and committee chairman happy is a big, important issue at most associations and franchise organizations. If you use a key committee chairman or franchisee's name, you will get a call back. Now, last but not least, let's talk about the difference between a gatekeeper and a receptionist. The job of the gatekeeper is to keep you from bothering or selling their boss. But the job of the receptionist is completely different. Their job is to make sure you get to the right person so they know what everybody does. So when you call with a question, they can direct you to the proper person. Call the receptionist and ask them all kinds of qualifying questions. Now, as long as their phones aren't lighting up and busy, you will find them a treasure trove of information. If they are busy, don't persist. Just say, hey, I'll call you back when you're not so busy. I can tell you're busy. I hear the phone's bleeping. Let me call you back. Do call back, because they will be very appreciative of your understanding of their job and be more forthcoming with information. CEOs, COOs, CIOs, EVPs, it doesn't matter. They come in 2 flavors. Those that like to come to work early and those that love to stay at work late. So when the phone rings at these off hours, they assume it's probably a staff member or a family member who knows their work habits. So they'll answer the phone. Now, what I like to do is compliment them immediately for being at their desk at this hour. The next thing I like to do is follow with a quick second compliment by saying how impressed I am that they actually answer their own phone. Executives love this kind of talk because it makes them feel like they're still in touch with customers and vendors. Ask them the standard question that you would have asked anyone else. Can you tell me who within your organization handles, in our case we're talking meetings, but it can be whatever product or service that you sell. Now, in big companies, they may not actually know who that person is, but they'll know who the department or division head is. And if that's the case, you've just earned yourself an extraordinary soft referral from the CEO. But now let me give you a little bit more advice on the CEO or the CIO. If you've interrupted a tedious task, they may look at this as a break and want to talk. So do your homework before you call. If you know you're going to call the CIO, then do a little Google work. Have they been quoted in a publication the company put out, a press release, a blog posting, an industry trade magazine, whatever. Compliment them on that quote. This will immediately break the ice and make them warm up and want to talk to you. Because remember, Executives' favorite thing to talk about is themselves. The second thing they like to talk about is their company. The third thing, well, there isn't a third thing. They just like to go back to number one and talk about themselves. If they ask you what this call is in reference to, I also want you to be armed with a version of a high-powered elevator pitch. Don't start off by giving your name, your company name, and your title. Because remember, at this point, a new prospect doesn't care. What they want to know is what you can do for their company. An executive tends to have three primary interests. How can you help their company increase sales? Or how can you help increase productivity? And last, how can you help me cut my expenses? If you can formulate a 2-3 sentence high-powered elevator pitch, you may get your first sales call within that company with one of the top executives. For example, if the CIO says, "What's this in reference to?" you can say, "I have an idea that's going to help you increase revenue and double your ROI on trade shows while cutting your overall marketing expenditures for the coming year." So here's my final tip. Whenever you leave a voicemail message, from whatever department, whatever title, I want you to end with the following promise. I will call you back at, give a time and a date. I will call you back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Then give your name and phone number. Just by promising that you will call back, giving the day and the time, sets you head and shoulders above your competition. You're not like everybody else who's calling to sell us. You're a lot more professional. When that prospect gets that message for the third or fourth time, it will show that you are a person of your word, that you're diligent, that you call, and you call at the exact time you say you will call. Now, two things will happen. The next time you call, they may be more likely to take that call. Secondarily, they may return that call because you're just a little bit more professional and polished than all the other salespeople that have called them that month. So there you have it. You now have a whole new collection of ideas, strategies, and tactics that you can begin to immediately outsell, outsmart, outpromote, and outnetwork the competition. You have a strategic advantage because you now know it takes between 8 and 14 touch points before a prospect will accept your call or return it. We creatively now know how to get into a company or an association and have their executive leadership team, accounts receivable, the webmaster, even investor relations help us get our prospect to take or return our calls. And we've even looked at some new markets like associations and state associations and franchise organizations and creatively used their committees and chairmen to get us the appointment we need to close the sale. So what are you waiting for? Turn this thing off. Let's get out there and sell.